So hopefully you can start to see a sort of beginning and end to the entire development process that we've defined here. And this is a lot more representative of a waterfall methodology. So just in case you might trip up as well, because there's two sort of distinct ways software is tackled in 2021 for sure, with agile being the sort of new kid on the block, and waterfall is more described as the sort of old way of doing things. However, what I would say is agile also has had a strong influence on the waterfall methodology, and it still exists, as we can see here today, and works really well for a more fixed cost and timeline project, so that you can really establish your version 1.0 of your app or your web app, whatever your vision may be at the current moment. And you may see as well, if you have a close look at the sort of timelines, just firstly on each point, 1 to 4, there's a lot of time spent on the development, as you can see at point 3, that's 3 to 6 months sort of on average, and maybe less time, focused on the initial areas, as well as point 4. But as you can see for point 2, we flagged that as the most important part. And that's really just to establish, at the very beginning of a project, you have the most flexibility. You've not written down any code yet, you've not implemented any servers, you've not switched those on. So you really have a lot of control over what you want your product to be at these. And this, of course, the first 2 areas, I would say, have the strongest influence on what your product ultimately is going to become. And a big component of these first 2 areas is what I would say is generating assets for yourself, so you can convey just a little bit more of what your product is without actually having it exist in a marketplace or on the web. So right now, for example, you may have a vision. You could have a more business focused mission statement and a pitch. So a lot of what we try to do here is put that on the track of software development, because a lot of that is useful in establishing things like user journeys, requirements, functional requirements, non-functional requirements, and then eventually that leading on to things like wireframes and designs, all of which are essential components before any sort of development takes place. So yeah, and just to really give you a quick overview, so research and ideas, when you're really just coming to you could be speaking to a digital agency, you could be speaking to us at that point without issue. But the goal for everyone at that point is to establish things like user journeys and functional requirements, so to be prepared for developing the full flow of systems. If you can imagine a single app, if you were to take Amazon or maybe Etsy, just try to think of all the screens that actually exist. When you're navigating an app, for example, you're just looking at the one thing all the time. You're never looking at the full picture. Really what you want to establish is that full picture at stage 2. And that's why we flag it as being such an important part, because that ties into so much, including things James has mentioned before, such as the user types, as well as things like the user flow and the user experience. And that's really where we center a lot of our thinking when it comes to establishing what your users are doing as they're interacting with the app, and how are they interacting with the app or the system.